Hi, I'm Jared Kenna, and this is Money in Tech. Today we're here with Tony Gallippi, CEO of BitPay.
Good to see you, Jared.
Glad to have you on the show. So Tony, what does BitPay do?
So BitPay is a merchant acquirer for Bitcoin. So we're the largest at what we do. We help businesses get up and running accepting Bitcoin. Whether you're an online store, whether you send out bills to people by email, or whether you're a retail store, we have tools for all those.
Okay. So could you give me an example of who would want to use BitPay? Why wouldn't you just accept the Bitcoins themselves?
So there's a lot of tricks to accepting Bitcoin. Number one is the exchange rate. If you want to accept Bitcoin but set your prices in dollars, you don't want to be checking the exchanges and updating your prices every 5 minutes. It's kind of tedious. So we let you set your prices in your local currency. For some businesses, if you're running on really low margins, you may want to lock in those coins right away. And as a business owner, you don't want to spend your time playing around with an FX currency exchange trying to sell your own coin. So we can lock in the rate and we can do that for you. And what that gives you is just a daily settlement every day into your bank account. So you can accept Bitcoins, but you're invoicing in dollars, you're receiving dollars, and your financial reporting is very clean. And it just makes it a better way to actually integrate with the accounting system that you're already using at your company.
So, pardon my ignorance here. How quickly do credit cards settle when you process with a credit card usually?
Credit cards settle actually the next day. So if you're a business owner and you accept credit cards, you get a direct deposit in your bank every day for all the sales you made the day before. BitPay works the same way. You get a direct deposit every day for all the sales you made the day before. So the accountants that are used to dealing with credit cards are very familiar with that process. The issue with credit cards is that there's a dispute process, and up to 60, sometimes 90 days later, the cardholder can complain to their bank saying, hey, this wasn't me. And then you as the business owner have to decide if you're going to fight that dispute or just absorb the loss. And if you don't do anything, they take the money back away from you. You have to provide a signature. You have to provide other documentation to prove that, yes, the customer really did make the purchase. And this is where online merchants are at a real disadvantage because you can't get a signature online. And so you're going to lose 90% or more of those battles and just basically have to give the guy their money back.
So how does BitPay deal with chargebacks?
Well, BitPay is great because we're built on Bitcoin, and every Bitcoin transaction is irreversible. So when a customer makes a purchase with Bitcoin, they're actually pushing the exact change to the merchant, and that cannot be recalled. If the business wants to send a refund to the customer, because let's say the customer is unhappy, if you're a good business, you don't want an unhappy customer out there, but it's your choice to send the refund back to the customer. So it functions very much like cash.
Okay.
If you're a retail store and somebody comes in and pays you with cash, they come back with a receipt and say, hey, this thing is broken, I want my money back. You can give them the money back, but you reach into the cash drawer and actually hand them the cash back. So Bitcoin works the same way.
Okay, so the responsibility is on the merchant and not the processor in this case to do the refund.
Correct, okay. And that's what keeps the overhead very low for every Bitcoin processor. That's how we're able to service merchants without a 100-person customer support staff that just has to pick up the phone and hear complaints from customers all day. And what happens with those people, when you complain to your bank that it wasn't you, there's a bad charge, well, then they have to go back to all these merchants and try to undo all these transactions. So every one of these merchants has to have a department to deal with the disputes. I mean, there's a lot of waste and fraud in the credit card system, and that's why the rates are so high.
So what other advantages does BitPay bring? I'm talking low fees, it's quicker, it's simpler, no chargebacks. Are there any other advantages that come with using Bitcoin to pay?
Sure. So the two that we talked about, it's lower risk and lower cost than credit cards and really every other form of payment that we have. But the other cool thing is that it's global. It's borderless by design. So if you're a business and you take Bitcoins, you immediately open up your business to a truly global customer base. Right? There's maybe 1.5 billion people online in the world out of 6 billion or 7 billion people overall. And now suddenly every one of them is a potential customer for you. So you can reach much more of the world than you can reach with credit cards or PayPal. So WordPress is a great example. When WordPress launched with BitPay, they did it because their service reaches the entire world, but PayPal and credit cards are blocked from half the world. So they have to give away their service for free just because they can't take a payment. And that's why they were excited about Bitcoin, and a lot of other global companies are excited about it as well.
So who are some major BitPay users right now? Which companies are using BitPay?
So we have a bunch. We have over 24,000 merchants as of the date of this airing. We're signing up 1,000 merchants a week. We've got 2 public companies that are using us. Zynga was the first. right after the beginning of the year, and then Tiger Direct.
Wow.
So both of them, are looking to increase their international sales. That's why they chose Bitcoin. But they also like it because it's lower risk and lower cost than all the other forms of payment that they take.
Has the growth been pretty linear on the merchant adoption? Or are you guys kind of limiting it?
No, I mean it's actually been quite exponential. If you actually look back at what we were doing a year ago, it was very small to what we're doing now. So adding 1,000 merchants a week is pretty aggressive. I would expect us to be adding 1,500 to 2,000 a week by the end of this year.
So why are some of these other businesses hesitant? Why isn't everybody using BitPay or Bitcoin?
You go talk to businesses and you explain the value proposition and they get it. They're like, yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, right? Why wouldn't I do this? But typically a business is full of priorities, right? They only have a small engineering staff and they probably have 100 other things that have to get done more urgently. So it's just a matter of, what can they do to make it a priority? And this is where, you have the chicken and the egg problem. You don't have people beating down their doors wanting to pay in Bitcoin. And even when they announce it the first day, people aren't going to beat down their doors.
Right.
They might get 1 to maybe 5%, bump in their sales. And for some businesses that might be exciting. For others, it may not. Depending on the products that they're selling. If they're selling something that people with Bitcoins would want to buy, they're going to see more of an impact than if they're selling something that doesn't really cater to a young male tech demographic.
Right.
So it's the user base that is continuing to grow by great companies like Blockchain and others that are really out there getting more wallets in people's hands, and it's by what we're doing to educate more people. But it's a brand new technology. It's only been around for a couple of years. Credit cards have been around for 50 or 60 years, so they have a lot more market penetration. And I think you'll start to see, as you get more consumer adoption, more merchants will say, okay, now's the time for me to add this because there's enough potential customers to make it worth my while.
For sure. So what's the future for BitPay? What's coming next?
So we're working on a lot of stuff. We focus everything that we have on helping merchants and businesses. We've got 28 people now worldwide, and we only do one thing, which is help merchants accept Bitcoin.
Excellent.
So we don't do any consumer-facing services. The regulations around consumer-facing financial services are pretty strict, not only in this country but in others. So we're going to be developing more tools for businesses. There's lots of ways that a business could use Bitcoin other than just payment processing, getting revenue in. For example, we just launched the payroll API, and this is really cool. This allows employers to give the option to their employees where the employee can opt in to getting part of their net pay in Bitcoin. So you have your gross pay, you've got your taxes, garnishments, whatever, you end up with your net pay. Instead of getting a direct deposit or a paper check, you can now get a portion of that in Bitcoin. And so this is an API we made available to our payroll provider, and we're working with others to get it integrated. But this is something that businesses are asking for and employees are asking for. So this is exciting. We also have a billing tool. This allows merchants that don't really have an e-commerce website to actually get their vendors to sign up for BitPay, where their vendors can send them a bill so they can use Bitcoins to pay their suppliers. So we're kind of moving up in the supply chain. Very
cool. You also open sourced some software, didn't you?
Yes. So there's a lot of things that we developed behind the scenes that we use for monitoring the Bitcoin network, for example. That's all written in Node and written in JavaScript. Mm-hmm. And we just started releasing some of these in a library. It's called BitCore. So the website is called bitcore.io. And we're going to be releasing more open source tools to this. So if you're a developer and you want to develop something around Bitcoin, you don't need to use an API into another service anymore. Now you have a library to talk directly to Bitcoin.
So as someone that doesn't come from open source, are you just doing this because you're a nice guy, or why do people spend time and money writing software and then release it?
We think that there's a tremendous amount of innovation that can take place around Bitcoin. And we think the best way to do it is for people to innovate and talk directly to the blockchain. Instead of talking to a third-party service. So we had to do that ourselves as BitPay. We can't rely on an exchange or another service to give us the data that we need. So we had to build the software. But it's something that can be usable to other businesses. And we'd like more exchanges to be built. We'd like stronger wallets to be built. So this is technology that anybody can use to actually build really cool products on top of Bitcoin. And now they've got a direct library to talk directly to the Bitcoin network.
Very cool. So how does Coinbase compare to BitPay? When I hear merchant processors, I hear BitPay and Coinbase. They're the only ones I hear people talking about.
Yep.
So how do you guys compare in fees and technology?
Sure. The technology is quite different. You don't see that looking at the surface. Mm-hmm. So the rates are about the same. We both charge 1%. We actually have something innovative where our rates start at 1% and go down from there. because we can move people to a SaaS model. And this is software as a service. This is unheard of in the payment space, but we're innovative and we launched it. So, we have 3 different packages, and it's based on different sets of features and different levels of service that you need, just like any other SaaS product. But then you can process all you want for no transaction fees. Wow. So that's really cool. And when you actually look at what we do under the hood, it's quite different. So Coinbase has wallets. They offer an exchange service, and they offer merchant services. So they're one company trying to do 3 different things. What they're really good at is helping people buy and sell Bitcoins. So that's what they are good at. When you look at how they do their merchant processing, it's a little clunky. If you actually were to compare the experience of using Coinbase to BitPay side by side, we do everything on the blockchain. So every customer has a receipt for every purchase because it's on the blockchain. Whereas if you pay with Coinbase from a buyer and a seller, you as the buyer don't have a receipt because that transaction never hits the blockchain.
So you don't have to be a BitPay customer to pay with BitPay, correct? Like if I want to go buy something from Tiger Direct, I don't have to sign up for BitPay, correct?
Correct, and you wouldn't because BitPay doesn't have a wallet. So
Right.
BitPay only acts as an agent for Tiger Direct. But the way we've designed our service, it follows all the open standards of Bitcoin. So it's fully compatible with Bitcoin QT, blockchain, multibit, Armory, all the Android clients, right? Everything that properly can compose and send transactions is seamlessly interfaceable with BitPay. So about 90 to 95% of wallets out there do that, right? They give the user control of their private keys. They can sign the transaction, broadcast it to the network right away, put it on the blockchain. We listen for it, we grab it, and that whole happens within a second or a fraction of a second. Wow. That we can mark the invoice as paid. So it works amazingly well, and so you see new wallets coming out, some that are browser extensions and other creative ways that people are doing to create a wallet. As long as you follow all the Bitcoin protocol standards, it's perfectly compatible with our system.
So I would assume that where it doesn't work as well is when you have highly customizable solutions, or maybe if I keep my coins in an exchange or something like that. How does it integrate? Say I keep my coins in Mt. Gox or Bitstamp or Coinbase, and I want to pay for something on BitPay. Is that a good idea? Can I withdraw directly from exchange to you guys to pay for something on Tiger Direct?
You can, but whenever you store your Bitcoins with them, whether it's a bank or an exchange, right, you're surrendering your keys to them. They hold your keys. Only they can sign and broadcast that transaction. If they're a reputable service and they can sign and broadcast that transaction right away, that's good. If it takes them 4, 6, 8 hours, then that's not so good, right? Because we do have a timer on our invoice. We can't leave that open forever.
Right.
So some of these services, especially if they have issues, they pause their withdrawals. Well, that's a problem, right? It's a problem if you're trying to make an immediate payment. So we recommend that people, if you use one of those services to buy Bitcoins, that's great. But you should move them out to a location where you've got control of the keys, and when you want to move them, you can sign the transaction and broadcast it immediately, and you're not relying on somebody else to do that for you.
And you'd suggest blockchain for that? I mean, is that the wallet of choice? Or?
Yeah, blockchain's a great wallet. I think other than the Bitcoin QT reference client, blockchain is the most popular wallet. They've got maybe 1.2, 1.3 million downloads, and it gives the user full control over their private key and password, so it does it right.
Right. Unfortunately, you can't download it from Apple anymore as of a couple days ago.
Yeah. Well, if you've had it already, just don't uninstall it in your phone.
So,
well, actually, let me add something. So this is interesting because blockchain actually had 2 apps with Apple. They had one in the Mac App Store that you can actually download if you have a Mac. That's a fully functioning wallet. And then they had the one in the iTunes Store, which is for the mobile device. So Apple pulled the mobile device wallet, but they did not pull the Mac app. That's still available.
Really?
And so I think Apple is clearly starting to differentiate the mobile payment space from the PC desktop payment space, and that's the one that Apple didn't like for some reason, but the desktop one on the Mac App Store is still alive and working.
We're going to see some competition from the Apple Wallet, possibly?
Possibly. I mean, they're playing around with this little Bluetooth beacon. You never know what they're going to do.
So hot word right now is transaction malleability. So Mt. Gox came out. They pretty much blamed the protocol and said, Bitcoin is flawed. It's not our fault. Is BitPay planning on blaming the protocol anytime soon? Is transaction malleability going to screw up my Tiger Direct purchases?
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Bitcoin protocol. Mt. Gox chose to do their own custom implementation, custom code of Bitcoin that is different from what the entire rest of the network is using. And whenever you do that, you can do it if it suits your needs, but you run the risk of being off on your own version of history than the entire rest of the world. So there's pros and cons to it. It's not a problem for BitPay. I mean, we follow all the Bitcoin standards, so we don't accept any unconfirmed transactions based just on the transaction ID. Because the malleability is a situation where you can actually change the details, inputs and outputs of a transaction, but the transaction ID stays the same. So any core Bitcoin user knows that, when you want to validate a transaction, you look at the inputs and outputs. That's what you can rely on, and that's what you should rely on. So Jeff Garzik is one of our employees, right? We employ a Bitcoin D-engineer on staff, and he makes sure that we do everything correctly to stay in sync with the rest of the network. So there's no issue from our standpoint, and none of our merchants are affected by this.
And this, you don't see it as an issue for Bitcoin as a whole in that case, as long as you adhere to the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can put patches and fixes in to account for that. It is an issue that's been known for a year. It's been up on the wiki for a year, and people have known about it, but it hasn't really been major news until one exchange started complaining about it, because people were using that issue to take advantage of that exchange and potentially execute double spends. If the exchange had followed the proper protocol to validate the inputs and outputs, then they would have never become a victim of those double spending.
Right. So, Tony, you've been in Bitcoin a while. It's about 2010, is that about right?
2011, actually, is when we started. I think Mt. Gox is probably the only Bitcoin business that was around then that is still around today. And so that shows how old we are. We're pretty old in the Bitcoin space.
Right. And you got in back before Bitcoin was cool. Back when people would make fun of us for talking about Bitcoin.
Yep.
I gave a friend, like 200 Bitcoins for picking up some groceries at Whole Foods one time, and the cashier was, making fun of us. He said, "Oh, you stupid internet money." And that was back in 2010 or 2011, something like that. Yep. How has it really changed for you? Like, how is your interaction with people? I know that now they all believed in you back then, but how has it changed, interacting with people over the years, talking about Bitcoin, parties, family, friends, that kind of thing?
It's interesting. I mean, I can't go anywhere now without getting bombarded from everybody wanting to either buy some Bitcoins or just learn more. I started posting on Facebook back in 2011, so my friends knew that I was involved in it for a while, and so now they send me stories. My grandmother sends me stories about Bitcoin. And so people are starting to wake up. If you actually ask a random room of people now who's heard of Bitcoin, probably half the hands will go up.
I'd say more than that in San Francisco. I'd say now I'm actually surprised when I meet people that don't know about Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot to it, right? I mean, it's a protocol, it's a network, it's a currency. There's a lot for people to understand. And so they may have heard about it, in one way, but if they actually dig deeper, they really learn that this is a pretty significant innovation. And sources like Bitcoin Magazine write really good in-depth articles that kind of go over the politics, the lifestyle, the economics, the regulatory implications. And there's other news sources out there that are good too, but that's a great place for people to get started.
For sure. So is BitPay potentially looking at any other altcoins or digital currencies? Are we going to see Ripple Pay anytime soon, or Doge Pay, anything like this?
Doggy Pay or
Doggy
Light Pay.
However
It's interesting. I mean, when we act as a processor and we actually stand and guarantee settlements to the merchant, we need to make sure that whatever we're accepting is the most counterfeit-proof form of payment we can find. But not only that, it's got to be liquid. Right. And Bitcoin right now is 97, 98% market share, and pretty much anybody who has one of these altcoins already has Bitcoin. So there's not much today that we would gain by adding them. Right. But what's really cool is that because these currencies are digital, if you have Litecoin and you want to spend it at a BitPay merchant, just convert your Litecoin to Bitcoin and send the Bitcoin.
Right. Right.
And that's something that Ripple did actually within the Ripple wallet. You can be looking at a BitPay invoice, convert XRP to Bitcoin and send the Bitcoin in one step. So it feels like you're spending ripples, but you're actually sending Bitcoins. We're receiving Bitcoin because that's what we want. But that's what we need today. I mean, Bitcoin is hands down the most powerful, most secure network. And the other ones are really just copies of Bitcoin. So if we ever wanted to add them, we could, because the calls are basically the same. We could add it without a lot of effort. It's just more of the risk that we would take by adding them at this point.
So this guy's been sitting here patiently the whole time. Yep. Who is this?
So this is our mascot. His name is Curly. And he's a representation of a puppy that we have as a real mascot in our office. Oh, wow. But we have these made, and he's our mascot, and we've been sending them around the world. And we've got a photo contest, so somebody can win a Bitcoin by taking a picture of Curly somewhere unique in the world. So take him to the Eiffel Tower, take him to the Grand Canyon, take him on a glacier, right? So submit some pictures to us. The address is marketing@bitpay.com. So just email the pictures, and we're going to have a photo contest every month where we're going to give away one Bitcoin to the winning photo.
Thanks for coming on the show, Tony.
Great. All right, thank you.
For more information on BitPay and anything else we talked about today, check out the show notes at moneyandtech.com.